Snow whispered against the mountains that morning, the kind of cold that bites through every layer of courage a soul has left. Clara's hands were cracked and raw, her breath turning to frost as she lifted another log and set it against the half-built wall. The cabin stood lonely against the endless white, a fragile promise of survival in a land that rarely gave second chances. She worked in silence, the hammer striking rhythmically, thud, pause, thud, echoing across the valley like a heartbeat refusing to die. Each swing was defiance, each nail a vow. She wasn't just building a cabin, she was building a life she'd been told she'd never have again. The snow around her boots was stained, with blood from blisters that had long stopped healing. But she kept going, because stopping meant remembering, and remembering hurt worse than the cold. Her husband had died last winter, taken by fever before the cabin walls were even raised. Folks in town had offered pity, not help. A woman can't make it through a mountain winter alone, they'd said. Clara didn't argue. She just picked up his tools the next morning and started hammering. Now, a year later, the world was still white, still cruel, but she was still standing. That was enough. Until she heard hooves crunching through the snow. She froze, her hand tightening around the hammer as the sound grew nearer. A horse crested the ridge, tall, chestnut-colored, its rider silent and watchful. The man was wrapped in a long duster, hat shadowing his face. He sat his horse like someone who had spent a lifetime in the saddle. Clara's first instinct was to grab her rifle. Strangers didn't ride this deep into the high country unless they were lost or dangerous. The man stopped a few yards away, lifted a gloved hand, and spoke in a low voice that carried easily in the frozen air. "Didn't mean to startle you," he said. "You're a long way from town." "So are you," Clara shot back, her voice steady though her heart was pounding. He nodded slightly, the kind of man who didn't waste words. For a long moment the two just looked at each other. Her, a worn-out woman fighting the cold. Him, a shadow against the sunrise. Then his gaze shifted to the half-finished cabin. "You built this yourself?" "Every inch of it." He dismounted slowly, his boots sinking into the snow. "You're missing crossbeams on that west wall. Wind'll tear through it by midwinter." She frowned. "You came all this way to tell me that?" He smiled faintly, the first sign of warmth on his face. "No, ma'am. I came to ask if you need a partner." Clara's hammer slipped slightly in her grip. "A partner? I don't even know your name." Elias Boone. Used to have a spread down in Red Rock before the fire took it. Been wandering since. Figure two souls working together stand a better chance than one fighting alone. The offer hung in the air, heavy as the snow clouds gathering above them. Clara looked at him carefully, the lines around his eyes, the rough calluses on his hands, the quiet strength in his stance. He wasn't some drifter looking for warmth. There was something broken in him, too. She turned back to the wall, hammering another nail as if that sound could drown out her thoughts. "I've worked alone just fine." Elias stepped closer, picking up one of the logs resting by her feet. "I can see that. But even the strongest trees need roots, and sometimes another tree to lean on when the wind blows hard." She stopped, breath misting in the cold. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not since her husband died. She wanted to tell this stranger to leave, to keep his poetry and his pity, but the truth was, the wind was blowing harder every day. Supplies were running low. The roof was unfinished, and winter was just beginning. She turned and met his eyes. "If you're here to work, grab a hammer. If you're here to talk, you can ride on." Elias grinned, just a hint of it, then rolled up his sleeves. "Work suits me fine." And so they built, side by side in silence that said more than words could. The sound of their hammers echoed through the valley, a duet of resilience. Days passed. The cabin grew stronger. Clara found herself watching him sometimes when he didn't notice. The way he moved, and careful, steady, never wasting emotion. He never asked about her past, and she didn't ask about his. But one night, as snow fell thick and slow outside, he broke the quiet. "I used to think the land took everything from me," he said, staring into the fire. "But maybe it was just waiting for me to build something better." Clara looked at the flames, her eyes softening. "Maybe it's the same for all of us." He nodded, then looked at her, really looked. "Then maybe you don't have to build it alone anymore." The words sank deep into the space between them. Clara's chest tightened. She didn't know if this was the start of something new or just two broken souls, finding warmth in the same storm. But as she watched the firelight dance in his eyes, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. When morning came, the sky was clear. The cabin stood tall and strong. Clara stepped outside, watching Elias saddle his horse. "Where are you headed?" she asked. He looked at her, a half-smile on his lips. "Nowhere unless you're sending me off." She hesitated, then said softly, "I could use a partner." He tipped his hat, climbed down, and said simply, "Then you've got one." The snow sparkled around them as the sun broke through the trees, bathing the world in gold. For the first time in months, Clara felt warmth not from the fire, but from hope. Together they turned back to the cabin, ready to face whatever came next, one log at a time.